Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and you thought this was a podcast, but actually, it's an origin story. And this is my co-host.
First name, Mr. Last name, Freeman.
I thought you were Matt.
Shut up.
This week on the show, we are continuing and concluding our Deconstructing director series on M. Night Shyamalan with his 11th film of the series, the final entry, 2019's, this year for 25 more days, Glass. It's been a very long journey to get here, but we finally caught up with Night's films, and we're here at the end, Matt, where we're talking all about Glass.
Yeah, it's momentous. I can't believe it. You know, when we started out, I didn't actually look at how many movies he's made, and
me neither.
Did not expect us to be doing this for this long.
We've only done one other director since we switched to this new multi-episode format, and that was the Wachowski sisters. And I forget how many movies there were. Definitely less than 11.
Yeah, no, it was maybe like 5 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something a lot more achievable. But I'm glad we did it this way because this has been a fascinating journey for me. If anything, it's increased my love of M. Night Shyamalan even more. But we'll get to all that as we go through the show. As always, this is going to be a full spoilers discussion of Glass and I guess every other film and released film in M. Night Shyamalan's lexicon, because this is kind of the perfect movie to conclude on, actually, but we'll get to that as well. And then we're going to finish off this episode talking briefly about Justice League for some reason.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Talk about the Snyder Cut, Matt.
Fine, if we have to.
Oh, we do. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Let's just go ahead and get right into it and talk about Glass.
Maybe this will all make sense if I explain who I am. My name is Dr. Ellie Staple, and I'm a psychiatrist. My work concerns a particular type of delusion of grandeur. It's a growing field. I specialize in those individuals who believe they are superheroes.
Good for you.
All right, Matt, before we talk about our overall thoughts, what is this movie about?
Well, this is secretly, or I guess no, not secretly, this is the third movie in M. Night Shyamalan's trilogy of superhero movies. Which,
yeah, M. Night goes comic book.
Which was a surprise, right? This movie is This movie is about the characters of Bruce Willis's character, who comes to be known as the Overseer, James McAvoy's character, the Horde, and Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, coming together in a mental institution. Yeah.
This is such an interesting film, and I cannot wait to talk to you all about it because it's very hard. Like, the IMDb summary here is really funny because it's just not accurate at all.
Yeah. Let me read that. Security guard David Dunn uses his supernatural abilities to track Kevin Wendell Crumb, a disturbed man who has 24 personalities. That's like the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yep, it's a 2-hour, 90-minute movie, and that covers the first 10 minutes of it.
And it doesn't even mention Mr. Glass, who's
the titular character.
Not just the titular character, but I'm going to argue the main character.
Yes.
And I hope we spend a lot of time talking about him as a character and Sam Jackson's performance, because I found it to be, I think it might be my favorite Sam Jackson performance out of any movie.
Oh wow, that's a big statement.
It is, but like it's so nuanced and like subtle. Like in any scene he's in, you can't take your eyes off him. And like I get that he's this very intense actor, and normally you can't take your eyes off him, but just every little thing he does in this movie is absolutely mesmerizing to me, and just the way he's into this character I found absolutely delightful. But like when he'll just the emotions that he'll express kind of almost randomly, but you understand where they're coming from within his character. I just adore it.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess overall I absolutely loved this movie, and it sounds like you did as well.
I did as well. Yeah.
It's such a weird movie. It is such a quintessential M. Night Shyamalan movie, right? It is not at all the type of movie that I thought I was going to get. So we do this thing where we made Unbreakable 15 years ago. He comes out in 2016, makes Split. At the very end of that movie, it's revealed that Split is actually part of the same universe. And then very quickly after that, basically the second Split was a hit. It was announced that he was going to be making the third film in this trilogy, Glass, and it was going to bring all three of these characters together. And actually, fun fact, the Horde character is a character that he originally wrote in his first draft of Unbreakable. That was going to be the person that David Dunn fought instead of just the random guy that was torturing that family. It was going to be the Horde character, and he realized basically there just wasn't enough room in the movie for it, so he pulled it out and eventually put it in its own movie. So this was kind of, I think, tonight, like the kind of movie he always wanted to make, and he's finally getting to. And so the question was, what is it going to be? Like, in this world in 2019 of superhero movies, you think it's going to kind of be a superhero movie, and you shouldn't think that, because it's not at all. But also, it is.
Yeah, I think the perfect kind of metatextual thing. There's a lot of possible metatextual things going on with this movie. The thing I want to talk about, the thing that I feel like I've learned over the course of these 11 movies, is the way he approaches things, and specifically something I've said before, which is that one of the reasons people don't like his movies sometimes is because they walk into the movie with the wrong expectation. And the thing is, you are always going to have a wrong expectation, because he just makes these weird movies where, of course, your expectation is going to be wrong, because you can't guess what he's going to do. If you just see a trailer that's cut for like, drama, you're not going to understand what this movie is going to be. And you really, like I've said before, you have to watch these movies multiple times to kind of get past that and then consume the story that he tells and not the story that you expected him to tell. And this movie does this thing to me, which is hilarious, where the whole movie is spent showing shots of this skyscraper, showing news clips of the skyscraper opening, the skyscraper ominously in the distance, people looking out the window at the skyscraper. We're going to go to the skyscraper, and that's going to be the site of our final battle. And it's going to be there's just going to be a blue laser that shoots in the sky, and that doesn't happen. You never go to the skyscraper. It's almost the, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? Yeah. But like totally intentional and meant to frustrate you, because the climax of the movie is in a parking lot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is fundamentally true, that this movie is designed to kind of frustrate you in very interesting ways. And it is no surprise to me that people didn't like it, because it is anticlimactic by design. It is frustrating by design. Mm-hmm. You were supposed to leave the film. Well, you're supposed to have a feeling at certain points in the film of, what the fuck? Really? That's it? That's it? And yes, that is it, but the movie leaves you with this beautiful tinge of hope that I really want to talk to you about the ending for a long, long time. Yeah. But I suppose we should get to the rest of the movie first. But I totally agree with you. This idea that Knight never does the expected, and I think throughout a lot of his early career, that was something kind of placed on him by that marketing campaign. That was something placed on him by the way that the studios he worked with chose to sell his movies. But this movie is like embracing that idea, right? This is Knight like fully grabbing hold of this idea as like, I'm going to do something unexpected and make it textual to the film itself. And not just, oh, you watched a trailer and thought this was going to be a horror movie? Psych, it's not. This is a movie about disappointing expectations almost.
Yeah. I think, I try not to read too much about the films beforehand, but I did absorb that at least one person accused him of basically making this movie be about his career. And I didn't think too hard about that, because I was like, maybe I can kind of see it. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think there's a very solid read of this movie to that. And I do not think that's all this movie is doing. And I think it's reductionary to just say this is a movie where M. Night is commenting about his career. But there is absolutely something to this idea in this movie of exceptional people out there trying to do interesting, like superhuman, wonderful things. And there being like a group, well, not a group of people like it is in this movie, but like there being this active force trying to stop them, convince them that they're not as great as they thought they were, convince them that they're not special, that they're just normal, that this feeling that they have that they're special is just their brain is broken, and this idea that it's almost convincing, but then at the end, despite all of it, video, movies, footage is what it gets out there. Like, I mean, there's something very specific to this idea that the reason that the plan that Mr. Glass had, the exposure of the superheroes, the exposure that these people are exceptional, that these people are not just normal, is shown through video. And it's interesting that a lot of the complaints I read about this movie when it came out related to that was, well, it's 2019. People wouldn't believe footage. Like, you can fake stuff now. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, that's not like, it's a symbol. Like, it's a metaphor for, to me, the power of filmmaking, the power of storytelling, the power of the other influencing people. Like, I think this, to me, this is amazing because, yes, and sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I do think this is a commentary on Knight's career, but I also think this is a commentary on the power of superhero movies in general, a genre which obviously Knight likes, even though he's not going to make the standard movie. Like, the idea of superheroes and the reason we like them so much is because they are people that do these amazing things that inspire us in our own lives to do amazing things. They're supposed to be inspirational, or at least at their core. Some of the different superhero properties do different things, but the idea that they're supposed to be inspirational, I think, is at their very core. And that is also what this movie is saying. This idea that just witnessing these incredible people that can do incredible things will inspire other people who are this incredible to step up, to come out into the light, to embrace who they are. I just think that's a commentary on storytelling in general, not just Knight's career.
Yeah, like it's completely what you said. It's reductive to say it's just his career. It's more like this is who he is. These are the lessons he's learned in his life.
Yeah. That
like if you're exceptional, there's going to be people trying to tear you down. Like this is actually kind of a good moral. And I think like I don't think he's just kind of navel gazingly talking about his personal story. He is talking about what it is like to be an unusual person, an exceptional person. And really, we're all exceptional in our own way. So like I think everybody can relate to it. I basically, like, I saw that, I was like, yeah, okay, I could see that, but like that's definitely not the most interesting thing this movie is doing.
No, I do like this quote. I did pull this quote because I just love it to death, though. It's the last thing that the doctor says to Mr. Glass as he's dying. They got it wrong in the comics. They talk about the secret evil groups trying to stop the heroes. I don't think we are particularly evil, and we don't choose sides. We try to stop both of you. If there's one of you, the opposite of you appears. It escalates. We step in. There just can't be gods amongst us. It's not fair. It has worked fine for 10,000 years our way. And I love this as just like this idea that like the world rejects change. The world rejects the new and the not understood and pushes back against it that way. It's like it's worked fine the way it was. Why do you guys have to come in and try to change things and do something new and something different? And I just love that as a theme. That's such a fascinating idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of cool actually that he doesn't imply that it would just be this golden age if the superhumans, which are a metaphor for these like disruptive creators or exceptional people, were permitted to exist. It's fairly clear that there would actually be elevated levels of chaos and damage if they were supervillains and superheroes, right? But sure. it would be, at least it would be honest. At least you wouldn't be like murdering these potentially exceptional people. And I mean, who knows? Maybe it could be better, right? Like for a while, Dunn was actually being basically a vigilante, keeping crime down in Philadelphia, and I guess I don't know. It's an interesting. I have to think about it to figure out if Shyamalan intends for there to be a balance or not. Like does Dunn save as many people as Glass killed? Does it offset, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that's fascinating to me is that we have like there's three characters, right? And we obviously have Glass on one side, and we have Dunn on the other, and in the middle is the Horde, who is kind of this really complicated. Where obviously there are parts of the Horde that are unquestionably evil, but there are parts of the Horde that are unquestionably good, and the goal of the Horde to just bring this true, like, part of the Horde's goal aligns perfectly with Glass's, right, where he just wants to be seen. And I love the beginning of the movie starts with the Horde having an argument amongst itself because they're like, okay, we've killed all these people and no one is, we haven't been seen yet. No one's acknowledging us. What's happening? No one is, like, nothing's happening. Nothing's changing. There was supposed to be this big change and nothing's happening that way. And this disappointment amongst the Horde. And so there's this constant push and pull, the soul of that character throughout this story.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite elements of that character was that I'm looking it up as we speak, trying to remember the name of the altar. Sorry.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, it's one of the main ones. Barry, I think.
Dennis is the one that loses faith.
Dennis is
Dennis is the neat freak one.
Yeah, Dennis is the one who basically goes for, he changes, right? He actually has a change, not quite a redemption because he doesn't really do anything to save anyone or to help, but he goes from he loses faith and he's like, I never should have listened to her, and I thought that was great, you know. Like his arc sort of went from the previous movie to this one where you see that he realizes that he's been duped and kind of taken in by this lie that the beast was going to give them power, but he was never comfortable with the killing, and I don't know. I love the Horde character. I loved it in the past movie, and I think I was maybe a bit worried in this movie. I was like, oh man, this element isn't going to work in this movie. It's going to be too over the top and weird. Like it worked in Split because Split was a movie where the whole movie was kind of warped around the existence of this character, but I was really concerned that it was going to feel like, just if you look at the trailer, for example, and you see like the beast running around, you're like, it just doesn't look right. Like something looks wrong about that. But then in the movie itself, I think it works perfectly. I thought it was kind of cool how I feel like McAvoy actually kind of tones back the performances in places to kind of keep from being too much. Like I don't feel like he's playing it as big as he was in Split. I feel like it's toned back and it's meant to balance with what, you know, with the other person in the scene more.
I think that's absolutely right, because McAvoy, as great as he was in that movie, took over the movie. Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of his movie. But I think Casey as a character, as much as I loved her, and I love her in this movie too, gets kind of pushed aside because of the power of that performance. And in a movie where you have three different main characters, all with their own, let's call them sidekicks, each character we're exploring in these very interesting different ways. And I kind of want to take time to just go each character and talk about them for a while. But there is a chance that they overpower everyone else's performance, especially Bruce Willis's, which is very Bruce Willis-y. There's a very good chance that performance just overpowers him. So I think you're right. I think that was a conscious choice, probably between Knight and McAvoy, to just pull it back a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. And I think, like, textually in the movie, what that also does is maybe reinforce the idea that the personalities within Kevin are warring and uncertain, and like the doubt and uncertainty there is kind of maybe melding some of these personalities together in some ways. We get to see more of the personalities in this movie, right? There's a bunch of new ones that we didn't get to see in the first movie, but it's only very brief windows into them. But I just feel like that holding back works very well in the context of what's going on with the character.
Yeah, right. I think it also helps that decisions the camera makes and decisions that the other actors make are kind of meant to make sure that that a scene kind of remains even. Like I'm thinking specifically of interactions between the Horde and the psychiatrist character, where
yeah.
where the camera does that very Shyamalan thing where it tends to look directly at her, like right in the eyes, and it just makes her seem like a very powerful presence in the scene. And then it kind of, in contrast, the horde is kind of often shuffling around uncertainly, which makes him seem like a smaller and more and weaker presence. Basically, yeah, just a lot of really small stuff. I'm not even sure if I could articulate it all. I definitely have to go watch it again, and pay attention to that to kind of clarify how exactly it's working. But overall, yeah, like it was really impressive to me how this kind of almost intrinsically over the top concept was kind of brought down to a level where it felt very real.
Yeah, and I guess let's talk more about the horde, and let's talk about Casey, and kind of, because I mean, like I said, there's a very important aspect of this movie, which is that each of our three main characters also has people important to their lives attached to them, and the movie is almost as much about these three other people as it is about our superheroes. James McAvoy's is Casey from Split. Bruce Willis's is his son, and Samuel L. Jackson's Eliza Price is his mother. And if I had a critique about the movie, the only thing the critique I would have is that, like, we just saw so little of Elijah's mom that, like, that relationship didn't feel like it had any emotional weight behind it to me. What they did cleverly is they shot some flashback scenes. I think Elijah got more flashback scenes than the other characters, probably because, as I think you're going to argue, he's the protagonist of this movie.
Yeah.
But Bruce Willis and his son, like, there's this emotional core relationship there. I mean, that's what Unbreakable is. And Casey and the Horde, that's a very emotionally fraught relationship, and I love the complexities they do with it. So those you feel. Elijah's and his mother, it's not as well established going into the film.
Yeah. I think in a relative sense, you're right. Although I definitely bought it. It wasn't
wasn't
something that bothered me at the time. I think a big part of it might even just be we had a whole movie contextualizing the Dunn father and son relationship. We had a whole movie contextualizing why Casey is, actually has complicated feelings about the Horde and actually sort of sees him as simultaneously a victim and a victimizer, in these different personalities.
Yeah.
But like you say, the only real background we have with Mr. Glass and his mom was some very, relatively little screen time in Unbreakable, which was not really his movie, and then a little bit more here, and for a lot of that, obviously, he's pretending to be catatonic.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really help either. But I think the movie points out to you, like, it's always the parents, right? The parents are always important to why the villain or hero ends up the way they are.
Yeah.
And that's actually fairly clearly made the case that it's her constantly telling him he's special that makes him so convinced that he's special.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, so let's talk about Kevin and Casey, because this is a very, like, you alluded towards it, that she's definitely a victim of this man, but also sees a kindred spirit there in Kevin himself. Kevin is a person that suffered from abuse and created these personalities as a way to deal with it. And instead of run away from him and hate him, she pities him and sympathizes with him and goes to see him. And I love that scene. I love that scene so much where Hedwig sees her for the first time and he's like, "No way.
Yeah.
You tried so hard to get away from us, and now you come see us? You're weird." Hedwig in this movie is just phenomenal. But I love that interesting twist on it, because we learn that Casey has put her uncle in prison. So she's fought back against her abuser because of this experience. And this is something that's it has changed her. It is like the focal point of her life that has changed her in some way. And I don't think what that's saying is like that you must suffer abuse to recover from something else. I don't think that's what that's saying at all. But it is certainly true that her experience with Kevin has changed her.
Yeah, it put her in a place where she was forced to fight back, and then she found that she had that steel.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then we see that, yeah, she's no longer wearing the all-covering, multi-layered garments. And
Yeah, I love how it emphasized that she's sleeveless many times throughout this movie.
yeah,
And I don't know, I loved her, and I loved her inclusion in what she does for him, and then I love what the movie does with that, which is betrays it. Like, she is the one that turns him from the beast, the bulletproof beast, into Kevin, which is why he dies. And it's once again the movie kind of trying to upset your expectations there, right? Like that's the beauty talking down the beast. And the reward there is supposed to be, okay, well then he's not going to be killed. He's found a way. Kevin says, I'm going to step into the light. I'm going to do it. Like throughout the movie, he's brought forth a couple times and he runs away. He runs away from the light. He's not ready for it. He's too scared. He's too weak. And he finds his strength in this experience, just like she found hers and hers. And then the movie upends that. It betrays that. It takes that away from us and just kills him. And it's this wonderful feeling of betrayal and disappointment. Like this is not the way this is supposed to work. And I think that is so important to what Night is doing, is like this is kind of what the world is going to do to people. It is going to abuse you and use your moment of clarity to destroy you sometimes.
Yeah, like that's the thing is I can very easily see being disappointed and frustrated by the way the movie ends because he's doing it on purpose, like you just said.
Yeah.
He puts you in this situation where that's not the way that story is supposed to go. Similarly, like the hero of the story is not supposed to be drowned in a rut in the
puddle. Yeah.
It's terrible, right? And even the way Glass dies, he kind of just gets like shoved.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, he's got internal bleeding now. He's hemorrhaging. Like that was it. He's dead now. It's not even like I don't even think the Horde meant to kill him necessarily. I think he just kind of shoved him and was indifferent as to whether he died or not.
Yeah.
And they all die. And I mean, I think Glass totally predicted all of that and maybe even calculated it and intended it to happen. Which is cool and is why he's a cool character. That I don't know. I definitely have a soft spot for the mastermind. I guess that's the one way in which the movie actually does work the way it's supposed to, is the mastermind plot is executed as intended, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like if that had been foiled also, like if the last thing that happened in the movie was they sat there waiting for the message to be released and it just never did, and then you like cut to the psychiatrist in their server room pulling plugs out of the wall, and then that was the end of the movie.
Yeah, true.
Maybe I would have felt different. Maybe not though, because then at least it would have been like a complete fuck you. Whereas as it is, it's sort of a I don't know, just a misdirect. I don't know. It's interesting because I did like the ending, but I have to confess that this movie's been out for so long that I'm pretty sure I had been spoiled on most of the important details of how it concludes.
Interesting, yeah.
So that's maybe part of why I wasn't disappointed, is that I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say, from my part, I loved the ending. I think I felt everything that I'm supposed to feel. I felt disappointed. I felt betrayed. Watching David Dunn drown in a puddle, the hero of Unbreakable, one of my favorite movies, like unceremoniously drown in a puddle for no reason at all. No reason. It's the most pointless, like insignificant death in the world. Ripped my heart out, and I think it's supposed to, but I loved what that was saying. Like I don't want all my movies to end like everything is great and everything goes your way. Like, and I liked that, and I left the movie feeling that way. And I had not watched this movie again until we did it for this. So I think it's been like 10 months. And over the course of that 10 months, the narrative around Glass cooled me on it a little bit. I think I've let myself get swept up into the it wasn't that good of a movie feeling, and like in the back of my, like I knew I liked it, so my thing was always like, yes, I liked this bad movie despite it being bad. And then I watched it again and I was like, no way, this is a good movie. This isn't a bad movie. It's messy in some ways, but this is a really good movie.
Yeah.
And And I forgot that.
Right. I was struggling with ranking it before the
Oh,
call.
yeah,
I was
God,
thinking,
I
like,
don't
where would I
know.
rank this? And you saying that just now has clarified why that is, and it kind of gives me an ability to step outside of the ranking for a second and say, in terms of endings of his movies, it is not at the top of my list. It's maybe in the bottom half of his movies.
Sure.
But in terms of everything else about the movie, I think it's one of my favorites. Just in terms of being pure fun and entertainment, and like precision in terms of how it's made, and the performances,
Yeah.
and the cinematography, which is something we haven't talked about specifically much, but I think at this point it almost becomes redundant. It's like, yep, this is his 11th movie. He continues to have really incredible cinematography, and everything looks amazing, and every shot is purposeful.
Yeah, it's. I mean, like, look, this movie is mostly people talking. That's the movie. There's like 2 action scenes, and even those are not, like, the action is almost immaterial. Like, it's mostly people sitting in chairs and looking at each other talking.
Yeah.
And it is a tense, fascinating movie, and that is because of the way it's shot. It's because of Shyamalan's trademark shots. You've mentioned them already. We've talked about them many, many times throughout this movie or this project. They're dynamic, they're intense, they're beautiful. We're going to talk a little about colors because we have to, because this movie is being very, very deliberate in its colors and how those colors reflect on different characters. But it's a beautiful, beautiful movie that manages to hold your attention, even though it's people sitting in chairs talking to each other.
Yeah, right. I think you could, it's funny. I think, I don't know. I was gonna try to say, like, I like the beginning and middle more than I like some of my other favorite Shyamalan movies, but then the ending of those movies are so good that they elevate those movies into being
Sure.
overall higher ranked. But yeah, I kind of already said that. Tell me about the colors though, because other than like the purple room, I admit I was not really paying attention and did not really notice color coding.
So each character is color coded, right? So Mr. Glass is purple, the overseer David Dunn is green, and the Horde is yellow. And the cool thing about the colors is I mean, you see them everywhere in the clothing they wear, in different elements, and kind of how they're lit in their different rooms. There's a beautiful shot in the comic book store where Casey is going to I think it's not Casey. I think it's David's son, whose name I'm blanking out right now. They're both in the store at the same time. But there's this beautiful scene where, like, there's heroes and villains on the back wall of the comic book store, and they're lit in neon, and heroes is green and villains is purple, which is supposed to allude specifically to our 2 characters that are those colors. And if you actually just like look up the movie poster right now, it becomes very obvious. This is not something that the movie tried to hide. In fact, I think it kind of built its marketing campaign around this concept.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, he wears the green raincoat, and Mr. Glass wears the purple suit, so that's
And the Beast is wearing those yellow pants.
Yeah.
And so here's the part about it I like. So this is great. Obviously, it's color coded. Color coding happens a lot in movies, but one of the things that I love about it is throughout the course of the movie, we see that I don't know what to call it, their sidekick, their person that's with them, slowly starts to wear more and more of that color. And the final shot of the movie, when they're sitting in, it's not Grand Central Station because it's Pennsylvania. I don't know what the Philadelphia version of Grand Central Station is, but they're sitting there and they're wearing the color of their person. Mr. Glass's mother is wearing purple, Casey's wearing yellow, and Joseph Dunn is wearing green. So it's like literally, like at the end of this movie, they said this wasn't a limited edition. This was an origin story. And I think it's part of, I think that's symbolically passing on the torch to these other people. Not that they're going to be like superheroes now, obviously not, but they're the ones that are relaying the message. And therefore they're the ones that are now symbolically carrying the color of their person. And I think that's really cool. It's a really cool touch. It's not like I said, the marketing makes it very obvious, but it's great. It's really great.
I'm glad you brought attention to that line, because I was actually just confused. I was like, but you're dying.
Yeah.
And then I think you're
It's
right.
not. It's not their origin story. It's the world's origin story. It's hundreds and thousands of heroes around the world will have their origin story from this moment.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a non sequitur, but I think one of my favorite elements of the story, like I'm a sucker for mastermind plots, and just every time that like it seemed like they had broken Mr. Glass, and then he had actually already planned for that and had one up them and outsmarted them and outflanked them. I was just like, I mean, this guy's a monster. He's terrible, but I love him. I want him to win.
Yeah. I mean, the movie kind of makes you do that. And I mean, he kills a few people in this movie as well, and he results in the death of more people. So yeah, definitely not a good guy. But yeah, you kind of want him to win. I think they do a very good job of painting everyone around him as also bad in different ways. Like the security people obviously abuse him. I love that scene where the guy like threatens to drop the heavy flashlight on his legs.
Yeah.
I think that I love how that's shot. Like he drops the flashlight and you think for sure it's going to hit his leg, and then the other hand like shoots up into frame to grab it at the last second. Beautifully done.
Yeah.
Wonderfully tense. I really like that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I love how his plan, like he's one step ahead of them always.
Yeah. I thought it was I don't know what the word is. I thought it worked really well that like Shyamalan could have had it be where the guy who has been shitty to him is the guy who he murders, right? With the piece of glass.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't, right? He writes the script very kind of intentionally so that it's the really genuinely nice guy.
Yeah.
Who's never mean to anybody. He's just a little bit of a doofus who gets his throat brutally slashed, and Glass just shows absolutely no remorse for this at all.
Mm-hmm.
Just extremely cold about it, and like that was an opportunity where the movie could have kind of pulled its punch and been like, yeah, well, the guy deserved to die, but in fact it did not, and it was like, no, he's actually a bad guy, and his goal is not necessarily good, and you're not you're like you shouldn't feel good about cheering for him, but you are still going to cheer for him because he's awesome.
That's that idea of his goal is not necessarily good is one of my most fascinating ways in which I wrestle with this movie, which is I agree with you. Like he's doing terrible things. He's supporting the Horde who has killed all these women and will continue to do so, presumably, all with this mission of exposing the world to the existence of these superheroes. And I think the end message of the film is that people have the right to know about this, and people it should be exposed. And this organization that says we're not evil, we're just trying to keep the status quo going. Those are the bad guys, absolutely. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that like we can let the Horde and we can let Mr. Glass off the hook. And I don't think the movie wants to do that. I don't think the movie is like yes, he wants you to cheer for him in the same way that like every kind of anti-hero piece of shit protagonist, you kind of inevitably find yourself cheering for them in some way. I cheered for Walter White in some moments, even though I knew I wasn't supposed to, because you just kind of get swept up into their world a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the movie wants you to be like, actually, that Mr. Glass, he was a good guy.
Right. I mean, I might phrase it as Breaking Bad definitely wants you to cheer for Walter White and then to reflect on why you did that.
Sure.
Because like, I mean, that show is clearly has those moments where like the music swells and you're like, yeah, Walter, get him. And then you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Right.
Just for me to talk obsessively about how awesome Mr. Glass is for a minute more though. Well, I guess this is more of a cinematography thing, actually. Like, how many shots in the movie are him with his crazy white hair with a light source basically behind his head or behind him, creating this like halo-like effect around his hair.
Yeah,
that happens at least twice in shots where it's just like very prolonged, where it really focuses on this mane of like bright silver hair that he has. Yeah,
that's a good point. I like that a lot. There's a lot of fun lighting things, especially around Mr. Glass.
Yeah. almost like he's refracting the light through his
almost as
glass like.
You talked about Samuel L. Jackson's performance, and maybe we could spend a little time delving into that a little more, because I agree with you that it's really good. And one of the things, the part that keeps like replaying in my head is the moment where they wake up in the morning and grab him to take him away to do the procedure on him.
Yeah.
And he sells this so well. Like, Sam Jackson sells this moment so well because you legitimately believe this thing's about to happen to him. Like the genuine fear on his face. Like it's a great setup because you have this, he's been catatonic the whole time. In the back of your head, you're kind of questioning it. And then his mom comes in and says, yeah, I really think he's just given up. And we know it's been like 19 years that he's been just stuck in this place on these sedatives. So we believe he's just given up. And then he's got this moment where he breaks out and goes and talks to the horde. And we're like, hell yeah. Like in the kind of cheering for him way where we're like, he's actually totally fine and he's been faking them out the whole time and he hasn't given up. And then there's this abrupt moment and Sam Jackson sells the fear in that moment. Like the look on his eyes, he does such a good job of like alternating between this completely poised, in control, confident man and a person who is in some ways doubting who he is, doubting his purpose, and also like afraid of what they're about to do to him. And that, I mean, in that moment, that's an act, right? Because he's taken the piece out and he knows he's going to be fine.
Right. It's just like this desperate, like, oh no, it's I've lost. But it's actually all a ruse. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think one of my favorite pieces of acting from him is, I'd be interested to hear your reaction to this, or whether this is weird of me to say, but it's actually the moment when he goes into kind of the office and he's reading the documents on the horde, and it's really just like watching his face as he kind of goes about his nightly spelunking routine. and then finds the files and then reads the files, and like at one point you kind of like see his mouth move as he basically mutters Kevin Wendell Crumb's dad's name under his breath in a way where he's like, where have I heard that name before, you know?
Yeah.
But like you can, it's all just in the performance where you can see that he's like, that name, like where have I heard that name before? But it's just in the performance, right? There's nothing. It's so microscopic, right? Like you almost aren't sure that that's what you're seeing, but you are sure. And then when he figures it out, he like has this huge emotional reaction, which is amazing. You're not sure what he's reacting to at that moment, and then later you realize, almost certainly, it's realizing that Kevin Wendell Crumb's dad died in the train accident that he caused.
Yeah. It's this moment of pure elation that he sells so well. Yeah, it's like vindication. It's a realization that everything he hoped that has been pushed, like the doubt that's been pushed on him, is wrong. Everything that he hoped he was, he actually is, and he's just completely elated at this moment. It's wonderful. It's really good. It's such a good performance, Sam Jackson. Oh my God, he's such a good actor.
I mean, I what's funny is like he's obviously a movie star. I think a lot of the times he's given roles where he's just not asked to have a ton of range. He just does the yelling angry Sam Jackson. And this is a movie where there's really it's a completely different type of character. It's completely against his like typecast character. And I think it's amazing. I think it's really good. Yeah,
and Elijah was always that character, even on Unbreakable. He's not the cool Sam Jackson guy character. He was always weird and weak, and this is like an exemplified version of that. 19 years later, and he gets to play a guy that's catatonic, and like he does a thing with his eyes where he makes one eye look bigger than the other. And I don't know how he did that. Like, I mean, it's probably just like a half wink on one of the eyes, but it just like, it really sells. It really sells like how catatonic he is. And the movie does another thing too, where we have to talk about the pink room scene because it's like the best scene in the movie. But as part of that scene, it cuts to Sam Jackson's point of view at one point, and his head has like kind of been listening to the side, and it does a Dutch angle on that part too, and that's just a perfect little touch there, just to reinforce that we're really looking through his eyes at that moment.
Oh, that was my favorite. I like smiled when that happened. I was like, oh, this is such a Shyamalan shot. You wouldn't see this in any other movie, and it works so well here.
Yeah.
And also, I think that's one of those like clues that makes you kind of feel like, nah, he's in there, he's fine.
Right. Yeah. So that scene. So I've talked to you before about one of the things I love in stories is these kind of gaslighting stories where it happens on Buffy, it happens on Smallville, it happens on some other things where there's just this random episode where your character wakes up in a mental institution and they're like, everything that you've done these past 5 seasons has been bullshit. You're insane. It's all a delusion. And as the viewer, it's bullshit. Like, your characters in this world are who they say they are. Of course they are. You've been watching them for 3 years.
It would be very brave of the show to make a swerve like that.
Right. But when you do it well, there's a part in the back of your mind that I think matches the part in the back of the mind of the character that's like, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's what I think this movie does so well, is that we've watched these 2 movies. We know David Dunn is a superhero. We know the Horde is a superhero. And yet the doctor character comes in, played beautifully. We haven't said Sarah Paulson's name yet, but she is like fantastic in this movie. She's so good. I love Sarah Paulson. She comes in and she builds this case, and in the back of your head, this can't be true, especially because you're in a comic book movie. This movie is going to end with a 3rd act challenge. Like, it's not true. But at the same time, you're like,
yeah. Well,
what if it is true? What if this is all just a big delusion?
Like, what's funny is like I'd seen the trailers and I knew how the movie ended, and yet I was still briefly sold on it. I was like, that would be an amazing twist. Actually, that would be a pretty classic Shyamalan twist, especially considering, because really it's not. It's very unbelievable for a television show, because you're like, they're not going to like change this from being a show about a vampire slayer into being a show about a mental patient. It's not. They would not do that.
Not midway through season 4 of 7. Yeah.
Right. But Shyamalan very well could do that in this. Yeah. In it being who he is, and this just being the 3rd movie in a trilogy. And like, I love that everything makes perfect sense, right? She's like, the iron they used in those bars, those were made 150 years ago. They weren't very good quality, and really like you're just a very strong man, and like you see it crack his confidence in that moment. You're like, and like the argument at the shotgun, like, those cartridges are very old, and a lot of them bounce off of the bars of the cage anyway, and you're like, that's true. It was so good, right? Like, it almost makes me wonder. In fact, I think more than wonder, it makes me very suspicious that he set up those scenes in those movies intentionally to make it just a tad ambiguous whether you were even seeing anything supernatural.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think like watching the beast climb the wall is supernatural. Like, I still think that is something that's so far beyond that I have a very hard time believing that. But I do think the power of gaslighting is that when you do a really good job at it, you can be convinced by it. And I think that's exactly what happens here.
Yeah, totally.
And I love that we see it happen to the main characters, but we also see it happen to their sidekicks as well, right? Like, I love the scene where Joseph Dunn is just at the gym and looks over and sees a man lifting a lot of weights, and there's people surrounding him, like cheering him on and shocked by him and elated at the power of this man. And it's just, there's no dialogue there. It's just the scene sells exactly what's going on in Joseph's head at that point, that, oh, he's just a really strong guy.
Yeah.
This is my dad, the really strong guy.
Right. And he's feeling all this turmoil because he's like, I could have been wrong about this my whole life, and I could have been enabling this weird superhero thing that isn't real. Yeah. And he's just terribly, terribly messed up about it because, I love his character. It's a fairly small part of the movie, but both the performance and, of course, just the story really sell. First, him being kind of desperate to get his dad out, and then full of doubt and confusion, and then
Yeah.
finally kind of coming back to, I like that he's like very brave and proactive actually on his own.
Yeah.
Like he's sort of constantly in the background trying to solve the mystery and help. I loved his character.
And I love the unspoken thing about their character. Like the relationship with his mother and David's wife is really interesting to me because she's dead, right?
Yeah.
And the movie opens and David Dunn beats up those stupid jerks that just punch someone in the face and record it on video for no reason. And I wonder if that's a commentary on stupid movies.
Well, they called it a Superman punch, so I'm gonna go ahead and say, yeah.
Yeah. Take that, Man of Steel.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he defeats those people, goes home, and then there's this beautiful thing Shyamalan does with the camera where he walks in the room and he takes off his jacket and the camera does this slow pan to the coat rack and it's empty.
Yeah.
And that's just this perfect way of silently saying he lives alone because there's no other coats on the coat rack. He's hanging up his coat. It's like you could have just done like a one thing coat rack, right? But no, it's a 4-prong coat rack with just the coat that he just took off hanging on it, and it just sells like the kind of the loneliness and isolation of his life. And then he sits down at the kitchen table, and one of the first things we see him see is Audrey, his wife, and an image of her sitting there cooking. And I find it fascinating because we learn later that she's died of cancer, I think it is.
Yeah.
But in this moment, in this memory that he has of her, he's going up to her and trying to get her attention. I need to tell you something. And she's not listening to him. And she's gone. But I'm wondering if they eventually told her what they were doing. They brought her in on this idea and she didn't take it very well. It's like this interesting thing that's like brought up in the movie, and you never really see it, but just the presence of it, I think, like changes your opinion of this man and what his life is.
Yeah, it definitely gives you this sense of where his head is at, right? He's not really fulfilled by what he's doing. It's more like he does this as an obsession and a compulsion,
right?
But I don't really think that he like gets joy out of it. He goes back to his apartment where he's alone. Just for the record, I also made exactly the same interpretation of the empty coat rack. I was like, yes, excellent. This is classic Shyamalan.
Right.
I think maybe something to do with like the order in which information was presented in the movie, but I was never really sure if I was supposed to assume that she didn't take it well and either it hurt their relationship or maybe even she left him before she died. Like we're not told anything to suggest that did happen.
Correct. Yeah.
But the fact that he has so much regret, like he could just have regret about never having told her and feeling like there was always this lie between them.
Yeah, that's very possible as well. Yeah.
But I didn't feel confident about it. I didn't feel like it was very important either, other than to understand that he has this kind of wistful regret over how he's lived his life, and you know, it seems like the only real positive thing he has going on for him is his relationship with his son.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because The Unbreakable was a movie about being miserable because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And you're not achieving your full potential. You're not living your life the way you were supposed to. And by the end of that movie, he has achieved that. Like that movie's beautiful in the end of it, where he's kind of reignited his relationship with his wife. Him and his son have this newfound relationship that they maybe never had before because he's just never been a present father. And then we move 19 years in the future, and like is true in life, we don't see that this one moment has solved all their problems. I think one of the great things is that he does have a relationship with his son still. They've kind of devoted their lives to each other, and his son has completely devoted his life to this process. But yeah, his wife's dead. He's living alone. He seems a little bit lonely. I mean, Bruce Willis is doing a very Bruce Willis-y performance here, but that creates this sadness that infiltrated David in the first movie is kind of present here still. Mm-hmm. And I think that only compounds when he's originally told that, hey, this thing you committed your entire life to, it wasn't real. It was just a delusion. But I just think that's interesting that the movie's willing to say that, that like, hey, this didn't like fix all your problems, and maybe it's the idea that you've been doing it in silence, right? Like that he's this overseer that nobody knows him, nobody sees him for the person that's doing this, because that's kind of what this movie's about in the end, right? Is like people being inspired by seeing these people and not just this shadow in the background.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, because the movie is pretty clear, actually, that there's little to no evidence, like photographic evidence, that he is at all superhuman, right? All of in fact, he goes out of his way to turn out the lights, which at first, pretty much until this moment, I thought was just simply him trying to hide his identity. But you can also read it as him hiding the fact that he's capable of throwing somebody across a room, splatting them against the wall. So he's gone out of his way to make it seem like there's nothing special about him, even though he's going out and doing this vigilante thing. And yeah, that's maybe he's still really not living up to his potential the way he's meant to.
Yeah,
I like that idea. That's cool.
Yeah. All right, what else do we want to talk about here? I feel like there's a lot still. I feel like I haven't touched this movie yet, but also I have.
Yeah, I mean, I only saw it once, and usually I like to kind of soak in these movies a bit more and catch the layers that I might have missed the first time. There's a lot of visual storytelling. I guess you could call it, like,
sure,
the whole the whole story of Mr. Glass taking the little lens doohickey out of the machine is, I believe, told without anyone saying anything. It's just showing a series of sequences where it's like, yep, that's how he did that. You see it on the desk, and I think that's fun. I mean, it's not not the most difficult filmmaking thing in the world. I just thought it was executed really well. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really great. Again, I guess to reiterate, I have a very difficult time ranking it because I might feel better about it, actually, about the ending after another viewing, because I might get specific things he's doing with that ending better, and then the movie overall might rank higher for me. But basically, it just, I think if we're wrapping up the conversation, I don't know if we are or not, but I feel like this just shows that he's gotten better and better at every aspect of his craft over his career, and just makes me really excited to see what he's going to be doing next.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think this is a really great thing to wrap up the conversation on, because 11 movies later, what did we learn about this guy, right? Like, what did we learn? I mean, the answer is a whole bunch, and we have like 11 hours of podcasts that show exactly what we learned, but I do see him, and I think the weird place I'm at right now is I think Sixth Sense is still his best movie. And that's a weird place to be, because I also think at the same time, I think he's only gotten better. And that appears to be a contradiction, but I think it's not. Like, I think Sixth Sense is just this powerful statement making movie. And then he just continued to do really, really interesting things. And I think the idea that the movies he returned to is Unbreakable, like, and not Sixth Sense, right? Sixth Sense is his most successful movie. You think a guy 20 years later is going to return to that and maybe franchise the shit out of that one. But nah, that's not the one he picks. He picks Unbreakable. And I think it's because he likes Unbreakable better. I think he likes that. Like, Sixth Sense is absolutely his movie, and it does a lot of what he does, and it's very, very good. But Unbreakable, Split, Glass are more M. Night Shyamalan than the Sixth Senses.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think maybe part of it is just like the story of the Sixth Sense is actually a very singularly amazing story.
Yeah,
Like a lesser director could have made that movie from that script, and it still would have been an amazing movie, and we would still be talking about the twist. We'd still be. It's possible we'd still be quoting "I see dead people," and we'd still be talking about the revelation that he's actually been a ghost the whole time.
Sure.
It didn't even require all of his firepower as a filmmaker. It was that good of a story, and so So that's why, that, in my opinion, that's why that movie stands head and shoulders above the others. Whereas I think you hand the Unbreakable script to a lesser director, you're going to get a weird, strange, boring movie potentially.
Sure, yeah.
Like really a lot of it is his ability as a filmmaker selling exactly the story that he wants to sell, which I don't even know if a normal person would like read that script and understand what he was doing with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what's going on there. And I love that he makes these weird movies that nobody else could have made.
Oh my God,
I
yeah.
think that's great. Like, I think it would be, I don't know how to phrase this exactly. Like, it would be really cool if he came up with another script as good as The Sixth Sense and then made that with his modern filmmaking capabilities. It would blow people away, right? I can't even articulate how much that would change people's perception of him, right? Like, if everyone else could see what we see in him after doing 11 podcasts on it, it would change the popular impression of him, I think.
100%. And I think that's what's most fascinating. And I love the way you phrase that, because I think you're 100% right that the reason why I think he's a better filmmaker now is because nobody but Knight can make Glass.
Yeah.
Nobody else could have made this movie. Nobody. This is him through and through. And the reason why it's good is solely because of, well, that's not fair. Not solely because movies are a team effort, but this is a great movie because it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is I think we've talked about this before, but I think this is why we like to talk about writer-directors, not just director-directors, because they understand exactly the purpose of every element of the story.
Yeah.
And if you have that disconnect between the writer and the director is going to have their vision, but there's going to be this little bit of space between what was intended and what the director thinks was intended.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times very interesting and beautiful things can come out of that space.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that in the instance of what we're trying to do with this continuing series, having that be basically butt up right against each other, I think allows for these fascinating movies and these fascinating takes and these explorations of these things that we've seen over the course of these 11 movies. And I just have to reiterate something we said. There was no dip in M. Night Shyamalan. That is a narrative that is just not true. There are some movies that were worse than others. Absolutely. There's some movies that were better than others. And there's also The Last Avatar, which is the exception that proves the rule. But
right. Yeah.
He was consistently and continually making movies and making weird, different, and fascinating movies from 1999 to 2019.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the thing that frustrates me the most after this experience is that article that called him the new Spielberg. M. Night Shyamalan is not the next Spielberg. M. Night Shyamalan is the one and only M. Night Shyamalan. He is a singular filmmaker that not everyone likes, and that's okay. I don't want to like a director that makes movies that everyone likes, you know? Like, I love that these movies challenge people, and some people walk away from them and go, nah, not for me. These are for me. He's a director for me. And if I learned anything from this experience, it was that I love this man's movies. I love the way this man looks at the world and the way he creates stories that reflect that image of the world.
Yeah. I mean, the Spielberg comparison is especially weird because he wrote almost none of the movies that he made.
Right, yeah.
It was only maybe like his first few movies that he actually wrote and directed. Mm-hmm. And then AI, artificial intelligence, and then nothing else. But yeah, like that's like Spielberg is really great at finding what he wants to pull out of a script and then making that movie. But
yeah,
I mean, that's why I just like the word storyteller, because I feel like that's the word that best describes Shyamalan. He's using every tool at his disposal to tell exactly the story that he wants to tell. And, you know, in every part of that process, he thinks up the story out of whole cloth, and then he brings it to you in the form of a film. And obviously there's a lot of other amazingly creative people involved. But like, it doesn't work without him him guiding it.
I agree. So that is M. Night Shyamalan. Before we go, we got to talk about Servant, which is M. Night's brand new Apple TV Plus television show that just premiered last week. There are only 3 episodes out, and Knight has only directed the first one. I don't know if he's going to direct any more. I know he's producing the show. He's not writing it. I think he helped write it, but he's not like, he doesn't have a writer credit on this. He helped develop the show, but I don't think he's the sole writer. But holy shit, man, this show is great. like I said, he's only directed the first one, but I think that him directing the first one has given the show a visual language that the other directors have imitated. Not quite as good. I didn't know that he didn't direct all of them, but the second I got into the second movie or second episode, I was like, this doesn't seem quite as tight. It's not quite as crisp. It's not quite as Shyamalan. And then I was like, oh, because he didn't direct it. That makes sense. But this show is basically about a family that lives in Philadelphia, of course, who lost their child, and the mother had an emotional breakdown, and as part of her therapy of getting over the child, they had her get like one of those extremely realistic dolls that looks exactly like a baby, is like weighted exactly like a baby, and that's supposed to help kind of wean her towards this point of acceptance. It's a very dark and heavy show, and it begins with them bringing in a nanny to help take care of the kid because the mother is going back to work, and she's still utterly convinced that this is her kid. It's a very weird premise, and then it gets fucking bonkers from there, and I'm not going to ruin anything about it, but it's really good, and I really think you and I need to come back and do an episode on it. Maybe we won't call it Deconstructing Shyamalan, but I think we're going to need to talk about this show. Maybe like Deconstructing Shyamalan addendum or something, because I have a lot to say about it already, and I really want to talk to you about it because it's vintage Shyamalan in the best way.
Oh, this is on the top of my list of things to watch right now, so you don't need to persuade me. I'm super super psyched about this. The premise sounds amazing. I really can't wait.
It is like the thing is I don't know where it's going at all, but I'm so along for the ride. And I think he said this season is 10 episodes. I think he said that it's been planned out to 50 if they want to go that far.
Wow.
And I'm just like, damn, Knight.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm there for it. Like, I just, great performances in it, some really great directing, weird shit that's emotionally heavy and weird and creepy and beautiful. Servant, we got to talk about it.
Yeah.
I got my Apple TV Plus subscription for free because I bought a new phone, and they're basically throwing these things at anyone. If you buy literally any Apple product at all, you get a free year subscription to Apple TV Plus. But from this show alone, I could say it's paying for itself.
Awesome.
Remember we did that review where I basically said all these shows are crap and I don't know why the service exists. I found it. It's Servant, and it's really good.
You just need one for it to work. Mm-hmm. Before we put a coda on Shyamalan, I did kind of a maybe seemingly random question, but it's something that kind of is always nagging at me, which is just like, I want to know more about how he directs actors. Like what kind of instructions does he give them? How does that work? Because I always find that he gets these really unique performances out of every actor that he works with, right? Even really good actors, he gets amazing performances out of. Actors who I don't think are particularly amazing elsewhere, he gets really good performances out of. Like it's very very consistent, right? Like I think I can't really think of like a bad performance of like any role, even like a side character in a Shyamalan movie, and that's unusual, right? We're leaving aside Last Airbender. That's not a conversation.
Doesn't count. Again, we need an exception to prove all our rules, and that is what the Last Airbender is.
I just wonder if that's in that book that you read at all, or if you know anything about that.
I mean, not too much. There is a little bit of that. I do think he's a guy that goes off of instinct a lot. There are filmmakers that are planners. There are filmmakers that will storyboard out every single scene and know exactly what they want out of everything. And not to say Shyamalan doesn't do storyboarding. He does, but he is much more of like a by the seat of his pants, but feeling like I will always remember the reason why the book said the reason why he picked, God, who's the guy in Lady in the Water? I'm blanking.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm blanking on this person's name. I love him.
Giamatti.
Thank you, Paul Giamatti. The reason why he picked Paul Giamatti for that role is he was meeting him at a restaurant, and the restaurant was like one of those basement ones where you have to walk downstairs, and he saw his shoes as he walked down the stairs and said, "That's my guy." So he's very much like an instinctual type person. And I think there's a lot of actors out there that respond very well to that kind of directing, where it's just like, I think he's much more willing to try different things. And he maybe doesn't have like in his mind exactly what it's going to be, and is much more willing to work with the actors and experiment with them. One of the things that I think is interesting is that you have all these very famous popular directors that are like notorious for being shitty to their actors. I'm thinking of like Coppola, like
Kubrick sometimes.
Kubrick, yeah. Sometimes Fincher, in that Fincher is just a perfectionist and will make you do it like 7,000 times.
Yeah.
Even Tarantino to a certain extent. You never hear that about Knight, and I just don't think that's the type of director he is. I think he, like, we talk about auteur theory a lot, and I think this whole thing is predicated on the idea that auteur theory is a thing and is real and is an interesting way to explore cinema. But I think Knight knows that this is a very collaborative experience, and I think he experiments with the actors in that kind of way, and therefore you can pull out the best performance. I think his in my opinion, his greatest skill is getting performances out of child actors.
Yes.
And how he does that, I have no idea.
And he does it consistently too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have talked before about how like there's really an unusually high fraction of his films have child actors in prominent roles, and other than the one movie, they're all really good.
Yeah.
So
I think he has a thing with children. I think he is kind of awed by them. As human beings. I think the quote in this movie that really cemented that feeling for me is when Glass is talking to Hedwig, and Hedwig asks what his superpower is, and he's like, "You're 9 years old. You see things the way they are. You're a child." And I just think that line like cued me through every single kid in every single one of his movies, and what they do and what they represent, and how important they are to the stories. And I love that so much. And to me, I know Avatar is our exception, but to me that's maybe what attracted him so much about that story. And yeah, he fucked it up. I'm not gonna say he didn't. But that is what attracted him to the role. I think there is something unique to, especially in that story, where you put a child responsible for the world and saving the world. And I think that's something that is he's really fascinated by that idea, by how children see the things around them, how children observe the world, how children deal with a lot of the hardships and pain and loss of existence from that perspective of being a kid.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what we said exactly about that movie, because I think like I don't think that child performances were even the thing that we had to complain about, you know? Like
they weren't great, but they weren't like definitely not the worst part. Yeah.
It was more stuff of like, why did they go with that particular take?
Right. Yeah.
That less like, oh, this is just an objectively awful performance. More at most, like, I don't really think that this Aang actor understands Aang, and that's a lot more subjective than, like I give him a huge amount of credit for being an actor's director, whatever that means. Sure. And I would love to know more about that. And like we've said a few times, I've kind of avoided digging into the extra textual background stuff about him as a person. I know you read that book. Now that we're done with the project, I think I am going to spend some time reading about him as a person. Yeah. Because I am super curious, right? Like, he's a fascinating individual.
Oh yeah. I think you should take some time and read that book. It's a pretty quick read. I think you would really enjoy it.
I will.
My dream is to sit down with that man and just talk to him. I could talk to him for hours, just pick his brain about everything, about filmmaking, about life, about, oh my God, that would be That would be the most amazing experience. There's like a handful of people that I would die if I ever got the opportunity to interview them, and he's definitely at or near the top of that list.
Yeah. Me too.
All right, so that is for the final time for now, M. Night Shyamalan. So who's next? Who are we doing next? We're going to take a little bit of break from the Deconstructing series. We appreciate at the end of our last episode on Split, we asked you guys to kind of feed us with some ideas for what directors to do next, and a lot of you did, and we really appreciate that. I think what we've decided to do, Matt, and by we I mean me, and I haven't told you this yet. Sorry. I think what we're going to do is like take 5 directors and just allow our patrons to vote on which one they think we should cover next. And we'll do that one. So it'll be 5 that we pick. We'll look at some of your suggestions and then maybe some of our own, and we'll come up with 5 that we want to do, and then we'll let you guys vote on which one. So I think that'll be a fun way to give back. So if you want your voice heard on that, it's a great time to be a patron.
Yeah. I love that idea. Yeah. So go ahead, and if you're not a patron, become one, and then you can tell us what series you want to see next.
Yeah. All right. So thank you, M. Night Shyamalan. God, I love all those movies except for Avatar: The Last Airbender. It doesn't count.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed these 11 podcasts, M. Night. Thanks for listening.
Because you're definitely listening.
Yeah.
Doof. Hey, Matt.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about Zack Snyder.
Sure, that sounds like an appropriate segue.
Hey, do you remember that movie called Justice League?
Is that the one with Doomsday in it?
No.
Oh. In that case, no.
That's the one with Steppenwolf in it.
Steppenwolf.
You know Steppenwolf, right? That extremely well-known villain?
The Thanos of DC, as my son said.
No, he's not even, though. That's the funny thing. He's like the Thanos' assistant.
He's that one guy with the missing an arm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a bad movie. But there's a thing that happened during that movie, and it's a very tragic thing where Zack Snyder stepped away from the movie because the death of his daughter. And so Joss Whedon was tapped to come in and finish off the movie. And the movie was not very good. And a lot of Zack Snyder fans, people that very much enjoy his films, very much enjoyed Batman versus Superman somehow, decided that this combined with the early footage that we saw in the trailer that looked very different from the final movie meant that Snyder left, and then the studio and Joss Whedon destroyed Justice League, and that's why it's a bad movie. It's all their fault. And that there is a cut out there that exists, the Snyder Cut, that is the true vision of Zack Snyder for the Justice League movie. And if he had just gotten to do that movie, it would have been awesome. And there's been this like hashtag release the Snyder Cut thing that's been going on for years and years and years around this. It might be real.
I mean, this is so hilarious because it was just a meme. It was like a joke meme, right? It was like no one. I mean, maybe some small percentage of people believed it was real, but I think most people who were using that hashtag were basically just mad. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did believe it was real, but I sure didn't. I sure didn't think there was a separate cut of the movie that Snyder had approved of, and then somehow that cut was trashed and replaced with the Joss Whedon cut.
Well, here's the thing. I still don't believe that. I mean, so here's what happened recently. I think on the anniversary, what's time? The 2-year anniversary of Justice League, like every actor started tweeting, release the Snyder Cut. Ben Affleck did it. Gal Gadot did it. The guy who played, I think Jason Momoa was the only one that didn't. Henry Cavill didn't, because Henry Cavill is so fucking done with this. He doesn't care. But and then Zack Snyder did it as well. And so like the release the Snyder Cut people were like going crazy because they're like, oh my God, the whole cast is behind us now, and the director. And then yesterday or the day before, Zack Snyder released a photo of at least 4 35 millimeter film cases. Written on the top was JL Director's Cut, 3 hours, 14 minutes, which is considerably longer than what the finished film was. So I don't know what's going on here.
It's interesting.
Because here's the thing. my initial reaction would be is like, oh, this is just an assembly cut. Like everyone puts together assembly cuts. This is like the first cut of the movie where you just take all the footage and like stick it together and say, this is what our movie's going to look like. They're usually really long because you cut down and trim and do all this stuff. And a lot of people said this is just an assembly cut. And Zack Snyder saw that on Twitter and replied, the assembly cut was over 4 hours long. And basically saying this is not the assembly cut. So I don't know what he's doing. I still think it's not real because like there's special effects and stuff. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that would have to be done on a finished movie. And also the canisters he showed were 35 millimeter canisters. And I'm trying to imagine a world in which not only is this cut of the movie completed, 100% completed, but then printed onto 35 millimeter film. I don't know why would you do that unless he printed it for himself to watch on his own projector at home.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I mean, my fantasy version of Zack Snyder totally would have like taken the materials that he had and like in his home, personal studio or whatever, and then like finished the movie by himself with his own funds.
Yeah.
That's the only reality where we actually do get something that is anything like a quote unquote Snyder cut, right? Because otherwise it's just, I mean, what is it? It's the same movie. I mean, the color grading is one of the main sort of complaints about the Joss Whedon cut, that he made everything brighter. It's like, okay, so you're gonna tell me that Snyder like recolor graded the movie?
Well, but the weird thing about that is there's no way of knowing that was a Whedon decision either. Like,
that's true.
The thing is, a trailer came out and then Zack Snyder stepped away, and then there's all this, now we have all this narrative about this. Like, they could have changed those scenes well before Whedon stepped away. It could have been part of the original plan to grade it differently. Like, relying on trailers for a real idea of what the filmmaker wanted the finished version of his film to be is just not very reliable. Yes, reshoots were done. The thing, like, Joss Whedon did not get a director credit on this movie, and normally the Directors Guild, is pretty specific on what work like qualifies for an actual credit. And so the idea that like Whedon came in and they reshot the whole movie and they changed it all around and he totally took the movie away from everything that Snyder wanted it to be, and it's totally different now, and that's the only reason it's bad. It wasn't going to be a bad movie anyway, even though the last two movies he made were pretty bad. It's an interesting narrative, and I think that the reason it's caught on so well is it's because like these things like line up perfectly to build this narrative that like the people that like Batman vs Superman but don't like Justice League have a perfect excuse, right? It wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't Zack Snyder made a bad movie. No, Zack Snyder's a genius, and it was taken away from him. And I don't know, man. Like, HBO Max is coming out, so there's a theory that like maybe this is just a very long form marketing campaign, that they're going to release the Snyder Cut as a launch thing on HBO Max, which I would hand it to him. That would be pretty brilliant if they did that, because a lot of people would subscribe to that service to see that.
Yeah, I will say that the one thing about this that seems, I'm going to say obvious, even though I might be wrong, is that this feels like a coordinated marketing effort of some kind. Yeah, this feels like it's building towards some particular thing, and whether that's going to be quote unquote the Snyder Cut being released, or like him parlaying this into some other thing that he, that he's stoking up the fans for, I don't know. But like again, the fact that all the other actors are tweeting this speaks to me that it's not just like random. I feel like he's asking them to do that. Yeah. Like that just makes sense to me.
I think so. And here's where I'm going to buck the trend, though. I hope it's real. I hope it's real, and I hope it comes out, and I hope it's the best freaking movie ever. And all these people that have wanted this movie for years and years 2 years have wanted this movie. I hope they get to see their movie and they like it a whole bunch, because why not? Like, and let me be clear here. there are a contingent amongst these release the Snyder Cut people that are really big jerks, that harass people online, that are mean to anyone and everyone, that says anything bad about Zack Snyder, to the point where they like attack them because they're insulting their god or something. Fuck those people. I like that. That's not what I'm talking about here. But the people who just really, really like this filmmaker and want to see this movie, I hope they get to, because who cares? Like, I don't think it's going to be good. I don't think it's real, but I would love to be proven wrong, and it's a good movie. That'd be awesome.
I definitely think, I definitely think Snyder's an interesting filmmaker. And I would love to see if this exists. I agree that I would be interested in it, because, like the thing that I'll say about, you know, the existing, you know, DC films that he was involved in is that they're really something. like he does make these really amazing visuals, and that has its place, right? So I totally watch the Snyder Cut if it came out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Well, that's
cowards.
Really, yeah. Oh God. So I guess we're on team release the Snyder Cut. I don't know how I ended up here. I don't think it's real. I do not think this is actually going to happen.
No, I mean, if the Snyder Cut exists, then of course everyone should want it to be released, because then even if you think it was going to suck ass, then at least you'll be vindicated, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think, if it is real, I do think it's not going to be very good. I mean,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's the Snyder Cut's real ? And they should release it ?
I agree.
Cool.
With all of that.
All right, so that is it for us this week. We did have one quick announcement before we closed everything down, though. We are doing, at the end of this month, we are doing our Doofcast episode, our last of 2019, is going to be a Films of the Decade episode, where each member of the Doofcast is going to kind of weigh in on what they think the best or their favorite movies of the past 10 years are. And it's going to be a whole big episode where you get to hear from everyone that is part of the Doof community, some of our old guests, or their shows. It's going to be really fun. But one of the things we thought would also be fun is to reach out to you guys and let us know what you think the best movies of the last 10 years are. So we have set up a voicemail box for you guys where you can call in and leave us a quick message, a minute or two, just talking about what you think the best movie of the last 10 years is. And what's that number, Matt? What's that number again?
That number is 720-386-2374.
Sweet. And I believe that only works for U.S. residents at this time. But if you international folks do want to participate in this, you can simply just like record yourself talking instead of calling in, and then shoot us an emo with that MP3 file, and we can do the same thing with it. Or I believe our friends at Media MD told me they have like a thing set up at their website that is just like allows you to directly record and send something to them, which is cool. Yeah, send voicemail. If you go to MediaMDpodcast.com, on the right-hand side, there's a send voicemail tab thing, and that just lets you talk directly into your microphone, and it'll send it to them. And if you do that, it'll get to us as well. So any of those ways, let us know. And what we're going to do is we're going to play, if we get a lot of them, if we get enough of them, we're going to play them all at the end of that final episode and just let you guys have a voice on the show too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how that ends up. You know, there may always be technical difficulties that make this not work the way we hope it will. But ideally, it would be really great to hear from all of our community members.
Yeah, and that number, by the way, is just like a number we're going to have forever now. So if you ever want to let us know what you think about anything, you can always email us at doofmedia@gmail.com or talk to us on Twitter @doofmedia. But you can also call us at that number whenever you want and just leave us a message, and we will listen to it. If you don't feel like writing something out, you just feel like talking out your feelings on stuff, you can shoot us a voicemail. That's fun.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like it. So
let us know via your voice what you thought about Glass.
Yeah. I will listen.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And of course, you can find this and all of our shows over at our website. That's doofmedia.com. That's where you'll find Media MD, Deep Impact, Do the Right Thing, our book club, We've Got Ward, and so much more. Kingslingers coming soon. Tons of shows. Lots of fun stuff. You can see it at that website. And if you want to support us and if you want to help pick the next director we're going to be doing a series on, you can become a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. There's tons of great bonuses and privileges and things that you get for supporting us on there outside of just getting to vote on the director. You get access to our Discord, bonus content we do, bunch of cool fun stuff. So head on over there and donate and help support us, help keep this whole thing going.
Yeah, I recently listened to Media MD's episode on the Transformers movie, the old one. That was fun. That was really fun. And
fun fact: Michael Bay, maybe one of the directors we're going to do.
Yeah, and then also we're going to be doing a book club on The Left Hand of Darkness coming up. So if you have read that book, come join us. If you have not read that book, read that book and come join us.
Yeah, it's another one of those like famous, well-regarded, loved science fiction books that we get to do on the show. I love doing those. It's been really fun. Even the ones I didn't like so much, like Foundation, it's still fun getting to discuss these beloved science fiction stories from our past.
Yeah, valuable to understand things.
100%.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, guys, we will see you all next week when we are talking about The Legend of Korra Season 1, returning to the Avatar series. And we got our two Australian friends, Ruben and Elliot, joining us for that. We've already recorded it. It's a little weird. So I know it's a really great episode. So you should watch it. I mean, listen, because it's not... Well, watch Korra and then listen.
That's right. Or vice versa.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.